Hi everybody, Mama Liz here. They're being behind schedule, turning off my electricity. So I'm going to take advantage of this and do a quick video. And then I'm going to do my other stuff before I try to come home to a house that's not super hot later. So I'm not going to enjoy this time frame, I don't think. But I'm sitting here as the news is unfolding this late morning, early afternoon. And I'm wondering, what's going on in this world? So from like the categories of the news grouped together, like Nicki Minaj attacking people and calling her certain things because of her beliefs, to the dresses at the Met Gala, to now General Millie's story is breaking from the book that's fixing to come out, where he reports having secret private line conversations with a Chinese official, and from the wording in his book, basically confirming to contact them should our then president attempt any military behavior or action. And I just sit here and I go, it's going to be a bad couple of days on the internet. Not because of the news stories particularly, but because people, the reaction of people, like you can already start to see some of the reaction on some of the YouTube videos and see how separate and different responses can be, from people going, the general shouldn't have done that, it's obviously treason, to people coming back and saying, well, obviously he should have done that, he was looking out for the whole world's best interest. And you see, so this whole chasm is in between these, and there are people that lie all within there and on each end. And it seems that they have no tolerance for anyone that is opposing, or they have, perhaps tolerance is the right word, perhaps they haven't sought out to increase their own ability or capability to process someone else's words and emotions. So I wanted to come on and say, as the news unfolds and as the day probably becomes emotional or heated for many of you in discussions online, sorry, I know, it's just the way the world is right now, please think about the filter that you have established in your head that filters your perception of the world around you and the people around you and the words that you process and see and read and compost, and how you compost them and how you respond to them. Just kind of sit down and do a self-assessment when you're reading the news. Are you looking at to see how the words are chosen, how the wording is used, how the words are written, specifically what they may be trying to communicate, if it's an editorial or an an absolute work of journalistic integrity, or is it an opinion piece? Why we have to try to distinguish nowadays between the two? Is it hitting you? Are you trying to say, am I understanding the words I'm reading? Am I understanding the context of the words they are trying to lay down for me, the reader, to consume? Or am I responding emotionally? Am I absorbing this to respond? Or am I absorbing this to react? Because those are two very separate things. Very separate things. And I'm afraid that a lot of people are going to be just getting the information to react, and react poorly on top of that. Because normally when they react poorly, it goes to an emotional place where the words change meaning, because in the last several years we have started to change the connotation and denotation of many, many, many important words in our language. And we've started this thing to where we can have a cause and effect almost with words that have black and white meanings, but we as a society have chosen to give them alternate meanings. and normally they're emotionally inclined or emotionally inciting meanings. So it entices people to be emotional rather than to focus on the words and the logic in the words. They focus on the emotion that is now attached to the words instead of the meaning that is historically and per definition assigned to the word. Are we losing our ability to really talk because of the shortcuts we are taking with our language in order to overcome another political party and another belief system, another ideology, and why are we doing this? I have many questions as to why we're seeing the downfalls that we're seeing in society today, and why our perceptual filters are so horrendously splattered across this huge wide spectrum. But we normally don't see the people in the middle. We only see the extremist points. Why is that? Why are we only seeing the extremist points when we know, when we get on alternative sources of social media, that we see a more median, even keel group of people? But when we get on other sources of social media, we only see the extremist points. Are we being force-fed so often by selected words that are being altered in meaning, and words that can be so easily changed by cause and effect, that our perception of our world is augmented because of that augmentation? I wonder. I wonder where this began and what we can do to stop it, what we can do to slow it down, what we can do to bring the polar opposites a little bit closer so that we don't have this huge disruption within our society. But then I question, do the people that run things, do the oligarchy, do even the people that represent us in our government, do they want us to come together, or do they want to persist with the power that divides us? And I don't know how I feel about any of these stories. Well, no, I know how I feel about the dress stories, because that's just plumb tacky. To wear a dress that says tax the rich when you go to an event that costs $30,000 to get into, where you can walk free-faced, smile, talk, be free, breathe air, but anyone else has to be masked and look like a horse with a feed sack on their face next to you, as if they're second-class citizens. That bothers me. That bothers me. And I thought about that enough to look at it, and I thought, well, okay, there were like not many words to this story, but there were a lot of photos, so obviously they were trying to get an emotional response. So I go down into the comment section, and the emotional response, because of the change of the climate, are most people going, she's fighting for us, she's fighting for us. What did she change? What did she demand changed? She went to a $30,000 event, funded it, probably with taxpayer money, wore a gown that cost probably more than most people's vehicles, and put a memo on it. And if she had put the money and the time and the resources into feeding the poor that she did in going to that event, could the impact have been a greater impact in her community rather than an emotional opinion piece in the newspaper and on social media? And I'm just like, I'm concerned. I'm concerned that the people that are pulling the strings, the people that have power and are financially capable to have power, I'm afraid that they're pulling the strings to disrupt the smallest fragments of our understanding of our society, be it words, so that we can't communicate and have dialogue and debate and understand and come to agreements, or be it to change us from logical thinking people to emotionally responding people. And I just wonder if that is the overall plan, because I do notice predominantly more emotional responses to news, whether it be an absolute journalistic piece or an opinion piece. I notice more emotional responses from people than logically thought out responses. So I see reactions more than I see responses. I see emotional reactions and like brain vomit, attack, emotional blah, more than I see, okay, so if I'm understanding what you're trying to tell me, you're stating this. Can you respond and let me know if that is correct? If it is correct, then I would respond with this. How do you feel about that? And we don't see that anymore. We don't see that anymore. Or we don't see anyone taking the time to sit back and go, well, how do they build that belief? How do they build that picture in their head? What information do they have? Am I disrespecting them by reacting emotionally? Were they not desiring that? Were they wanting a logical response? What's the best way to react to this? What's the best way that's going to help the most minds meet in the middle rather than emotionally run far apart? And I don't know. I'm concerned for our country. I'm terribly concerned about the stories coming out today. I'm terribly concerned about how they will impact everyone in this nation, because we are so absolutely, there is just, honestly, there's no middle. It's just complete bifurcation down the, you just have to go to either pole. There's nothing in the middle anymore. And I worry that we don't understand what we're absorbing, why we're absorbing it, and how we're absorbing it in order to form a response. And if we don't understand why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and the words we're using to do it, and how the words are being manipulated that we're using, then are we losing our ability to communicate effectively altogether? It's going to be, my brain's going to hurt for the next few days, because I don't know how I feel about this, because I'm not sure I'm absorbing it correctly yet. I'm not sure I'm absorbing it in a way that I can respond effectively, because it is going to be such an emotionally responsive, it's going to get an emotional reaction from most people instead of a sit down, let's talk and have a dialogue. And so I'm so stumped by what I'm feeling that I'm afraid it's affecting the way I am digesting the words. So I'm going back and I'm double and triple reading and saying, okay, stop having emotional responses. Make sure you're digesting the words. Why are they using these specific words, though? Oh, well, we've seen these specific words used for the last 2 years, specifically to alter the meaning, or to control the connotation, and so that people know the connotation rather than the denotation. So they know the societal response, but they don't know the historical written definition of that word. I'm just really concerned. It's a great thing for everybody to think about, because it does challenge you to communicate more effectively. And I think a lot I think a lot on these lines when I read news or I respond to something. That is why normally, if I am emotional, I will I might be sarcastic, but I will not sit down and like brain vomit emotion. I will kind of go, I'm building my response on this, and and that's specifically why when I heard what I heard a few days ago, I just responded with law and how Tennessee state law viewed that occurrence. And it was still, well, y'all know how that one ended. It was still an upsetting experience for a lot of people. But if we can't process something as simple as that, how are we going to process, just something as simple as Tennessee state law being broken for protective custody? How are we going to respond to a general with behaviors that he openly states in his book that challenge much of the nation's laws? I'm open to ideas. But I mean, it's going to have to be a careful conversation. We're going to have to be very respectful. Or it's just going to turn into another separation anxiety party. And then the two sides will fall apart and never talk again. And we all know that's not conducive to mending our nation. But I'm open for suggestions on how you are composting this, what you're absorbing from this, and what is your immediate perceptual filter stuck on? Is it the wording, the formation of the sentences, the information trying to be spread, disseminated, or is it you just immediately go internal and feel emotional and just immediately want to respond? Because that's something we each need to identify about ourselves, because it helps us become more logical thinkers, and it helps us think about something before we respond emotionally, which is great. And it's why I don't respond emotionally a lot to anything. But I do, Kazi, no. But I do often think about things for a while before I respond. And if I get emotional, it's normally because I have really found it necessary to stress that side of the conversation, which I don't often do. I don't know. I'm confused. That is where my brain is right now. Looks like I'll have all day to think about it, because when the power goes off here and I go down there in the mountain, I won't have any phone signal or Wi-Fi, so I just have time to think. Yay. So yeah. Gonna head down the hill. Y'all, I'll come back and read what you tell me later. If I get this upload before the power goes out. If not, I'll read what you wrote tomorrow. Bye, y'all.